All right, so now that we have seen the front end user interface, let's create our Express app and get started with it. So the first thing that I would do is I would go to the terminal and I would type npm init and we'll use the name photogrid, and let's keep the version number as 0.0.1, and let's just keep pressing our enter, and that's it. So what this does is it creates our package.json file, which as you know by now is very important to us because it keeps a track of all the dependencies. Next, let's install npm install express --save. Right, so that downloads the Express framework. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to download socket.io because that's also needed in this project. npm install socket.io --save. Right, so once socket.io is installed, we will also download the Hogan Express template engine like how we used it in ChatCat. So npm install Hogan-Express --save. Alright, so that finishes the initial set of dependencies that we have to download before we can start creating the basic app scaffold. Now inside of Sublime, let's start by saving out our app.js. So I'm in the folder, I'll just type app.js, and we'll start by creating a variable called express, which will be followed by the path module. So this is what we're going to start with. Now create an app which essentially invokes the express method, and we're going to set our views property by using the path.join __ dir name comma views. So that establishes the views folder as the source for all our HTML pages. Then we're going to set our template engine, and we require Hogan-Express, and finally we'll set this as the view engine. This will be followed by the express.static middleware, and what this does is it establishes the public folder as the source for all static assets like your JavaScript files and your images and the CSS files. Then I'm going to set app.set port, and we're going to set the port to process.env.port, or if this property is not there, then 3000. Then I would also create a router variable which uses the express.router module, and to start with we'll just create the most basic root route, request response next, and this should simply render out the index.html page, and we'll pass in a blank object for now. To get this router working with the app, we'll say app.use and pass in a reference to the router variable. Then we'll create a variable called server, set this to require http dot create server, which essentially listens to the app variable, and we'll create the IO, which is a reference to the socket.io module, and we'll invoke the socket.io in a slightly different way than how we did it in ChatCat, because the version of socket.io ever since we recorded the ChatCat videos has been upgraded to 1.0. So this will be a tiny change in how you use socket.io. In this example, we are using the latest version 1.0, and the way you invoke socket.io is by invoking it like a function and passing in the reference to the server. So this will be slightly different from how we did it last time, although that technique would still work here, although that's only for legacy reasons. Alright, so one last thing to do before we can get our very basic Express app up and running is that we'll do a server.listen, and we'll say app.get, and we'll get the property port, and we'll just have a callback function which outputs to the console photogrid running on port and followed by the active port. So let's run this app and see if this works for us. I'll go back to the terminal. And we'll say node app.js, and it seems to be working. So let's open the browser and see. So localhost 3000, and you can see it's working, although you will not be able to see the CSS file. So if you remember our videos from ChatCat, we just have a tiny thing to amend before that can happen, that can work correctly. We'll go into the views folder, we'll go into the index.html, and we'll just get rid of the reference to the public folder, because this is now implied after using the express.static middleware. So let's get rid of both these references, and for now I'm also going to remove references to the public folder over here where we are referencing these two images. Now once we save this file, let's just go back and refresh, and you should be able to see the photo grid page. So what we've done in this video is we have created our basic app scaffold in much the same way as how we created it in the previous example, in the ChatCat example. And in the next video, we're going to break out our routes into their own module, and that's where all the functionality would be.